Good morning, seculars, or afternoon or evening, whenever you're listening. I am your host, Sunny Secular, and this is my co host, Fiona.
Hi. I'm
You
all
have
Diana
reached,
Ross today.
she's Diane Ross today, y'all.
I'm Diana Ross today.
And welcome to Secular Minority Podcast. On this podcast, we give a non religious, humanist perspective on life. We engage in friendly discussions. We educate, we share deconversion testimonies, and we explore topics that are trending in social media. This is a safe place for all people. It doesn't matter your ethnicity, your gender, orientation, your pronouns. None of that is a problem here. We don't shun, and we welcome your questions in the comment section below. With that being said, today's episode, we're going to talk about, as you can tell from the title, it says, Who the fuck is Asherah? Asherah. Sorry,
A-
Asherah.
Asherah.
And we're just going to touch bases on who she is and why she was erased, or even if she was erased. All right, so let's start off with this. Who is she? I have a book here I'm going to show for everyone. It's the Illustrated Dictionary of Religions, Figures, Festivals, and Beliefs of the World's Religions. So this book has all different kinds of religions from all over the world. For those people who always want to say my religion is the best or my religion is the correct one, there are thousands, literally thousands of religions, and yours isn't any different. Sorry to tell you.
Yeah, this is
But
the right one. Everyone's religion is the right
everybody's just
one.
right. Okay, okay, everybody's just
Everyone's
right.
is right. What are you even saying?
And inside this book, I'm going to just read to you a little excerpt it has. Now, in this section here, it is showing for everyone Western Asia, and at the bottom, it has just a little small excerpt on Asherah. It says Asherah was known as the Canaanite in the Canaanite goddesses. She was known as the fertility goddess. She was El's wife, mother of 70 other deities known as Astaroth in ancient Greece, and she became Aphrodite, and in Mesopotamia, Ishtar. So she's had many names, but it all boils down to her being the mother uh, of the gods and goddesses. Fee, what do you think? What do you have?
Well, in doing a little bit of research, I came to find out that now, first of all, they've done an amazing job of basically, if not completely, removing her from the Bible, minimizing her to a pole, literally, to a pole in the Bible. But at one point, she was actually considered to be the wife of Yahweh. She was
Hmm.
worshipped alongside Yahweh. And I want to point to two scriptures, and we will put those scriptures up on the screen. But we have Deuteronomy 16, verse 21 commands, "You shall not plant any tree as a sacred pole." And the word that they used there was Asherah. So in the Jewish scriptures, or at least in the version of the Jewish scriptures that we have, they have reduced her to a pole. And then we have First Kings 14:23. For they also built for themselves high places, pillars, and sacred poles, or asherim, on every hill and under every green tree. So we see that in the Bible, she was reduced to being translated into being a pole, as in Pole. However, there was, I would not even try to pronounce this researcher's name. I will not try to pronounce her name because it's very unusual. But
Okay.
what they said is that they found amulets and figurines that were primarily Canaanite that actually had inscriptions, and the inscription is a petition for a blessing, and it says to Yahweh and his Asherah, and they interpret that inscription to mean Yahweh and his wife. Now, if you've done any research into the origin of the Israelites, you realize that they are, or they were, a sect originally from Canaan. They actually came out of the Canaanite camp. Okay, so it's not surprising that there was a Canaanite god and goddess. But when they started moving towards monotheism and away from polytheism, and there's a lot of study that shows that at one point the Canaanites were polytheistic. They worshipped various gods and goddesses. They had the sun god, fertility god, fertility was usually goddesses, the goddess of love, the god of lightning, the god of thunder. They had various gods. So they were polytheistic. That's the Canaanites. And since the Israelites were originally part of the Canaan or the Canaanites, then they were also at one point polytheistic. But then they started moving in the monotheistic direction, and of course, the very patriarchal monotheistic direction, so that the goddesses got scrubbed first and foremost, and then it came down to being simply Yahweh. But a lot of studies have shown that the original God was El. He was the big guy. He was the top dog. He was and Yahweh was actually a god under El. And Yahweh had a wife, and that was, or at least there was a goddess alongside Yahweh, and that goddess was Asherah. Isn't that interesting? Because we
Yeah.
don't hear, there is now in modern Christianity, there is no mention whatsoever. And of course, since she's referred to as simply a pole now in a lot of the scriptures that we read, she's basically a non-entity. But at one point, she was very important because it was literally, let me see if I can get the actual inscription. The inscription asked for a blessing from Yahweh and his Asherah. And Yahweh and Asherah were seen actually as a divine pair, which helps to strengthen the case that Yahweh had a wife. It was his female counterpart.
Now I wanted to bring up something too. I saw I was trying to find the YouTuber that I watched the other day. She specifically had a channel speaking
Yes, she,
about her, and I'm trying to
yes,
see if I can find her name here.
I can get
Uh,
it for you. I think I don't want to mispronounce her name, but I believe it's Johanna. I can get it for you. And that is a wonderful, she did a really, really wonderful job of dissecting this entire. I'll get it for you. Don't worry. You don't have to look for it. I got you.
I'm trying to pull it up now because she brought up. Well, actually, I saw a couple of YouTubers, and one of the YouTubers I wanted to ask you if another scripture brought her up. Was it? Do you have the Bible near you or your phone?
Well, I have my phone. I no longer own Bibles, but
Oh,
yes, I do have my phone.
they gave Second Kings 23:4. Did you do you
Yeah.
what does that say? It's
Second
in
Kings 23
23:4.
4. All right. So let's bring it up. Let's
Oh, and I
see.
found the girl too, but I'll let me know what
Was I
that's.
right about her name?
No, this is another YouTuber. Her name is Esoteric Rain.
I like it.
Yeah, and
I like
her
it.
video, for those of you who want to look it up, her it's Esoteric Rain, and her video is Why God Hates Asherah.
Right. So Second Kings 23, verse 4. The king ordered Hilkiah, the high priest, the priests next in rank, and the doorkeepers to remove from the temple of the Lord all the articles made for Baal and Asherah and
Mm-hmm.
all the starry host.
Yeah, they
Yep,
brought that
yep,
one up
yep,
too.
yep. He burned them outside Jerusalem in the fields of the Kidron Valley and took the ashes to Bethel. So in
Okay,
this verse, they're actually referring to her as a god, well, goddess, along with Baal.
goddess.
And you
Exactly.
see, again, you see the removal. So in this scripture, they removed Baal and Asherah. And at that time, Baal was also considered to be a god, a minion god, just like Yahweh. And they removed both of them and burned them outside. So they literally removed her from the temple.
Which is what
Like,
I wanted to bring up because in one of the documentaries, they were saying that this gentleman, he was going to a temple. I wrote it down. That's why I'm looking down. He went to a
right,
temple that was basically, it was on the outsides of Jerusalem.
right,
And in the temple, there was two large statues, and the statues were at two separate altars. There was a large statue, a small statue, a large altar, and a small altar.
right,
So for the people or the scholars who are trying to say, oh well, that was a rod or a staff, it's impossible for it to be in Joshua and a staff because you don't make
right.
a altar for a staff. And also it says too that they brought cakes. Is it Second Kings
Yes,
21:7? Second
so
Kings 21:7.
I'll get it for you. I live for this stuff.
Is that the one that said that they brought cakes for her? I'm trying to see if that's the one.
21:7. He took the carved Asherah pole he had made and put it in the temple, of which the Lord had said to David and to his son Solomon, in this temple and in Jerusalem, which I have chosen out of the tribes of Israel, I will put my name forever.
Okay, so the commentator was saying that the reason why people are getting confused is because the word Asherah had two separate meanings. One
Right,
did have a meaning of a pole, but there was another meaning, which was the goddess, which is why in the
right,
temple they had two different altars. Because just like I read earlier in the other book, she was considered to be the mother goddess, the mother of all of them,
right.
and they would worship her as well.
Yes.
It wasn't until the as you said earlier, the Israelites and the Canaanites, the Israelites beliefs
Moved up.
run
Yeah.
into they basically run into each other in beliefs.
Yeah.
So when they ran into each other with the beliefs, then all of a sudden that's when you presented, even at a time where people had different gods and goddesses, like it was, worshiping for, oh, this is for the earth, this is for the fire, this is for the
Yep.
rain. But then all of a sudden when it came to the Yahweh, it was, I'm everything, and everything else is, false.
And if you do a deep dive into because I have been fascinated by the fact that when you read through the Bible, the Israelites always seem to be at war with the Canaanites. They want to wipe the Canaanites out. But on, only to find out in truth and in fact that
Hmm.
those were just myths built around why the Jews were no longer part of Canaan, but they were originally Canaanites. The Jews were literally originally Canaanites. But I guess in trying to find their own identity, oh my God, this hair is out of control. It this hair is out of control today. In trying to find their own identity and trying to figure out their own gods, and they went the way of monotheism, and then Yahweh morphed into an almighty, all powerful God. But he did not originally start out that way. El was the God, and then Yahweh and Asherah and Baal and the others were sub gods, or minion gods. Um, but but over the years, as the stories were retold, and I guess maybe they found their own identity, they decided, and then they started moving away from polytheism because they really, and maybe they wanted to keep as far away from their origins as possible. So they went the way of Yahweh being the Almighty God. But Yahweh didn't start out as the Almighty God, and he wasn't alone. There were a bevy of gods and goddesses that were worshipped by the Canaanites and those surrounding, not just the Canaanites, but the land surrounding the Babylonians, the Greeks, the Egyptians. There was always a multitude of gods and goddesses. But in wanting to set themselves apart, they started moving along the way of monotheism. And then Yahweh morphed into the Almighty God, which, they still worship to this day. But that was not their origins. And I was fascinated to find that out. I was absolutely fascinated to find out that the Israelites actually came out of the Canaanites. That still fascinates me.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah. Yeah.
especially when you read the biblical accounts. When you read the biblical accounts and line it up with the historical accounts, and you realize more and more that the Bible is not history. Well, it's not 100% history. There may
Yeah.
be some historical things in there, but the Bible is not history.
And that's what I've heard a lot of people bring up the fact that there are lots of books even in Harry Potter. If you have a certain street that everybody's familiar with, you're not going to say, "Oh, well, Harry Potter must be real because they talked about this street."
Right. It's
No,
that's true.
it was put into the story to make it familiar for you.
Right, exactly. And I think that is what we need to recognize, and not we, because we know the truth. And that's what people need to recognize. I honestly, I don't even think the original writers of scripture intended for it to be scripture. I think they intended it to be stories to help them understand and explain what was happening around them. But because
Right,
they're ancient, and church fathers and whomever said it was scriptures, they became scriptures. But I don't think, for instance, I sincerely, and I don't want to go too far off topic, but I sincerely do not think that Paul intended his letters to be taken as scripture. I think Paul was just writing letters to churches, what he believed, and it wasn't intended to be holy scriptures. I think he was just writing letters as if I were to write you a letter, Sonny, and then in 1,000 years they were to find it, and here we are discussing whatever, and they're like, okay, this is holy scripture. Let's
right.
worship Sonny and Fee
And you're like, "I
because
just wrote a letter. What are you talking
yeah,
about?"
oh yeah, no, it was just I was just writing a letter because I mean I don't know why we would write letters, but let's say that was our only form of communication.
Exactly.
It's likened to that. Just because it's ancient does not mean it was scripture. Paul was just writing because he had no other way of communicating with the churches that he founded. And he was just, and who knows what the hell was going on in his head? Who knows if he was high as a kite when he was writing those letters? Nobody knows. I suspect he was. I suspect he was on some ayahuasca. I suspect Paul was high like a kite a lot of times when he was writing this stuff. Paul and John, Patmos, who wrote the book of Revelations, I really think he was high like a kite. I don't
And
know.
there's another
That's,
scripture here that brings up that name as well. It is Judges 3:7.
I've got it. I've got you. Judges 3:7. And for anyone who's wondering, I am reading the NIV version because it's, simple English, but I know it's not usually the best version. It's not usually the best translation. So feel free to use whatever translation you feel
And
comfortable
that's
with.
a whole nother conversation too.
Oh,
Oh, you
that
use
is,
NIV. You don't use King
yeah,
James.
King James.
The pedophile.
Okay, so let's see. Did you say Judges 3:7?
Judges 3:7. Yeah.
Yeah. The Israelites did evil in the eyes of the Lord. They forgot the Lord their God and served the Baals and the Asherahs.
Mm.
So here they've made Baal and Asherah plural. So I'm guessing that means they served
Gods and
the gods
goddesses,
and goddesses. Yeah,
which
that's
shows
that's
she
how
was
this.
a goddess.
Yep, which angered the Lord. and it burned against Israel. Let's see, did he kill anyone? He usually kills people in the Old Testament when he gets angry.
And then
Let's.
and that's another thing that I wanted to bring up too. If you've ever been a fan like I was, actually, let me go back here.
Please do.
I started being a fan of Greek mythology in the 6th grade. Now, at a time when everything was force fed to me as being a Jehovah's Witness, I was a
Right,
kid. Okay, I was in the 6th grade.
right,
At a time where everything was being force fed to me, for the first time ever, somebody brought up something that was against what they were saying, but also fun. Our 6th grade teacher took 30 minutes, and her thing was, if you hurry up and do your work, then I'll read. So we was like, oh yeah. And so we would
right,
hurry up and do our work. And the last hour of the class, she would either have a slideshow, a movie, or she'll read to us, and she taught us the Greek myth, the Greek gods and goddesses. It was literal. It was a pyramid. So Zeus was the father, which
right,
I was like, okay, in my head, oh, that's Jehovah, the Zeus,
right,
and then he had his sons, and then they had their wives, and so
right.
on and so on, and it went all the way down. That was my aha moment when I saw what they teaching me is not any different than what other people are.
Ah, there you go. Yeah,
The Greek mythology, where everything was the thunder god and the rain god, and all of this
yeah.
and all of that, and I was like, okay. But when she taught us about all of those, I still hadn't heard of Asherah as being in there. But as I read in the other book, I knew her as Aphrodite.
Aphrodite. Yeah, which I think we're more familiar with Aphrodite, and that is
Exactly.
true.
Yeah,
And it's
yeah.
interesting as you said that. Do you know? I think I can't reference who I heard it from because in scrolling through trying to find this one video, I realized I look at a lot of YouTube videos. I look at a lot of YouTube videos, but I heard someone said that Yahweh was originally the god of war,
Yeah,
and they surmised that that is probably why there is so much violence with in the Old Testament when referring to Yahweh, because
exactly.
originally
He
Yahweh was
was
the
the god
god
of
of
war. Yeah,
war.
yeah.
So it should not be surprising that
And
everything
somebody
that
said volcano god as well.
oh, there you go. So it shouldn't be surprising that there's so much that he encourages so much genocide, because as the god of war, what else is he going to do? You know, you
Exactly.
expect the god of love and fertility to spread love and fertility. You expect the god of war to always want to go to war. You know,
Hmm.
so that's just an interesting little thought.
Yeah, and the stories in the Bible to me correlates with a lot of the Greek mythology stories. It's still stories. You know what I mean? Like you
Yeah,
said earlier, it shouldn't. I don't think anything shouldn't have ever been taken literal. Noah's Ark, seriously.
I have some. Okay, now I'm going to be
Lot of
honest.
his wife. Come on now.
Uh, I'm going to confess. I'm not proud of it. Let me be clear. I'm not proud of it. But at one point in my life, I believed that there was a global flood.
Yeah.
I also believed that Lot's wife was turned into a pillar of salt
Hmm.
because of her. I believed all of these things. But as I was explaining to someone, these things were fed to me from the age of 3. Of these were, in Sunday school, these were the stories that you were taught. So now that you're getting more and more information, and you're like, what the heck did I even believe? And I want to point something out. I'm wearing my crystal bracelets today because
Yeah.
at one point I also believed that these held magical powers. I'm not
Right.
proud of it, people. I'm not proud of it. But at one point I do believe. Now I just think they're pretty, and pink is my favorite color. So I'm just, yeah. But at one point I
Okay.
believed they
There it
held
is.
magical
You got.
powers.
You came back. You was frozen at first. The
Oh,
screen
yeah,
froze
yeah.
for a minute.
Oh, I'm back here.
Yeah, you. But But you had said that you thought they held magic.
Magical, yeah, I thought they held magical powers at some point. So, we really do believe some stupid things sometimes, don't we? Until we learn more. And then,
Right.
the more you know, the more you
And
know.
I'm glad you brought that up too about the fact that he was looked at um Yahweh was looked at as being the war god, and which is why he has so much violence. But in my opinion, just like they created the Greek gods and the myths behind that, they also created God in the image of what man would be. Because
Correct.
when it goes to Greek mythology, you have the gods, the goddesses, and then you have the demigods, which were the people who were born half god and half human. And then it goes down to, the puny little human. So with it being with Yahweh, Yahweh was created with human tendencies, because what God do you know is going to be like, oh, I'm a jealous God, you can only worship me and not talk about anybody else.
Yep.
Jealousy is a human trait.
Yeah, it is. And that, although as I always said, I was never a free thinker. That always got to me. That always bothered me. And not enough for me to do anything about it, but it always bothered me. How can God be a jealous God? Jealousy is such a petty negative. I mean, even human to human, in strong relationships, there's very little jealousy. I won't say no jealousy, but to say I am a jealous God, and worship only me or else, that seems so petty for an almighty God.
Right,
Even when I
exactly.
was a 100% believing Christian, I mean, that just doesn't make sense to me.
Which actually goes against the ones who always say, oh, well, you don't understand God's ways because it's beyond you. But he jealous.
Yeah,
And
but we
he,
understand jealousy. It's such a silly human emotion. You know what I mean? Of all the human emotions, I don't understand how a God could feel anger
jealous and petty.
or
He
jealous.
he
Yeah,
killed kids for making fun of somebody because they was bald.
it's
Who
crazy.
does
That
this?
yeah, you know. But as I heard one of those scholars say, a lot of these myths, they were just repurposed for the time and location. So it's about geography and era. So there were older civilizations, as we know. There's civilizations much older than the Christian and what we consider the Israelite um, era. There are civilizations before. There were Egyptian myths, there were Greek myths, there was Sumerian myths before the Jewish and even before the Christian myths. Because a lot, even as you said, the demigods. I remember asking someone if Jesus was a demigod because that
Right.
got
Actually, he
woo,
would be though,
they
wouldn't he?
they did not like, as one of my
He's a
favorite.
demigod. I didn't think about that.
Yeah, I asked someone, I'm like, is Jesus a demigod? Because his mother was human, but his father
And
was a
his
god.
father was
So
exactly
think about it. That makes him a demigod, just like Loki, just like the
not Loki.
like like Hercules. They did not
I
like that
know.
at all.
Exactly.
But
You're
that's what it is.
right.
And the thing is, for instance, the New Testament, it's not even written in Hebrew, right? So it's written in Greek. So you're trying to tell me there's no Greek influence in the New Testament at all? That's impossible. So
Right.
really, it's just a repurposing and a repackaging for the era. And of course, there may have been some clandestine purposes behind it, like most things, power, control,
Hmm.
indoctrination. So I mean, I know we've veered off of topic, but
I know
it's
it. Yeah.
also it's also tied in.
And
So I think, and me, now we don't speak about goddesses because they've all been wiped out because
and
they've
I
gone the
wonder
way of
why.
monotheism, and I wonder why. Yeah, because I mean, think about it. The same Bible that has wiped women that has wiped goddesses out have also reduced women to property. So most women in the Bible, unless they play some kind of crucial role, they really have no names. You know, we
Which to
have
me is
Eve.
another jealous aspect. You're so jealous
Yeah,
that you
right.
took out
Oh, I'm
the.
so sorry. My
Uh,
dogs, my dogs. You know, they love to get in. My dogs love
yeah,
to
I
get in
know,
on the
right?
action. They love
You're
it.
so jealous that you took out the women.
Yeah, or reduce them to property. I mean, women are reduced. I mean, what is Lot's wife name? She was turned into a pillar of salt, and we don't even know her
Her
name.
name was Lot's
I
wife.
mean, yeah, her name is Lot's wife. Her name is Lot's wife. You know, I mean,
Yeah.
come on, Lot's wife. We know about Esther because, of course, she was critical to David, who was critical to Jesus, right? We know about Esther. We know, I mean, but there's so few people. Not Esther, Ruth. Sorry, there's so few women that
And the
we know about.
misogyny too, because most of the guys who were supposed to be the good guys were actually the bad guys. They were drunkards. They were, they had wives, concubines, side chicks,
Yep.
and all kinds of stuff. They got second chances. They got, they had all kinds of
Yep.
things going on. They were okay. They had second chances, but let a woman turn around.
Yeah. Nope. Yeah. Let's turn her into a whole pillar of salt. You know, a whole pillar of salt.
Let a woman turn around. It's over.
For her disobedience. Oh my God! Can I tell you? Can I tell you how that word just irks me so much? Obedience. I was talking about that just today. That word obedience. Oh my God. But we've been scrubbed. They've been scrubbed from the Bible. It's interesting. It really is interesting. What's even more interesting is I wonder what things would have been like if the goddesses were kept in the Bible and if women were placed in a higher esteem. How would that have affected the society at large that we have now? I mean, think about it.
Now, see, that's one thing that I will bring up. Um, in the pagan religions, and okay, I'm trying to see how I can put this without making other people upset. But
Right?
in paganism, if you're into witchcraft or things like that, you're going to have goddesses. The men are
Right?
going to worship the goddesses, not worship, it's a strong word. You're going to make a altar for the goddesses. You're going to make an altar for the gods. You're going to make an altar for family members who have passed away. Everybody correlates with each other for a purpose, just like, back then when they had for the fire, for the, you have different kinds of goddesses with different color candles and different rituals.
Right?
Everybody gets along with no problem. It's just only when you come into religions such as Christianity, Muslim, and things like that, then that's all of a sudden male dominated. And that was one of
Yeah.
the things that kind of drew me to the pagan, because of the fact that it included the women as well as the men, and they
Yes.
both had the same type of importance.
Agreed. And I think it's mainly the Abrahamic religions that are patriarchal. Because I do think a lot of the Eastern religions, because for instance, in Hinduism, there are goddesses, very active, very powerful goddesses up until now. I mean, there's still, I can name a few, because again, Trinidad and Tobago is very cosmopolitan and very cultural and interreligious. But even in Hinduism, there are quite a few goddesses. There are a lot of goddesses that are worshipped and respected. And some of them are actually quite powerful, even more powerful than some of the male counterparts, and that's in Hinduism. So, I think it's primarily the Abrahamic religions that are so patriarchal and monotheistic as well. Because I mean, they could have been and I'm not saying that it should be fully a matriarchal type of religion, but what I'm saying is, I think it would have been way more balanced if religion went the way of having um gods and goddesses. I just can't help but think that things would have been different in society, because
Right.
it's because of the degradation and how little value women had back then, that, and since so much of the world was colonized and Christianized, that women had to fight. I know why you're laughing. That women had to literally fight, because at one point women were basically a marginalized group. We were a
Mhm.
marginalized group of a minority, so we were treated as a minority, so to speak. Although in certain cultures women were treated with such high esteem, but
Right.
in the Abrahamic, because of those cultures that are under the Abrahamic religion, no, we were reduced and relegated. And since the Western culture is so Christian or Abrahamic, you just see that again, women were relegated and now have to fight to be treated as equals. And that would I don't think that would have been the case if there were gods and goddesses, because everybody would have been it would have been a more level playing field. That's just
Right.
my humble opinion.
Right. And I wanted to bring this up too. Let me see if it'll allow me to share it. Oh no, I didn't put it in the slide. No, my computer. Let me see if I can pull it up here. Only if it'll let me. Nope. Okay. Never mind. But I have here. I'll just tell it to you. So when I went on Amazon to look for books on Asherah, there came a book. I put up a book and it was called History's Vanquished Goddess Asherah, God's Wife, the Goddess Asherah, Wife of Yahweh. Yes, all of this is the title. Wife of
Wow.
Yahweh, archaeological, archaeolog, archaeological,
Archaeological.
or yeah, and historical aspects of Syro-Palestinian traditions. Okay,
Wow.
so this was the
Okay, that's
book.
a long title.
Yeah, I'm not promoting the book because I haven't read it. What caught my interest and the reason why I had to print it out is because of the comment that was in there. When I scrolled down to read the comment of the book, this is
Oh,
what
can you
somebody
share
said.
some, please?
This is what somebody said. It said, and this was posted February 22nd, 2020. The person said, "My research led me here. My intuition always jackpots. I figured out that the I am that I am was just bullshit as it sounded. When Moses asked God who to tell the Egyptians sent him to let his people go, God answers, tell them I am that I am sent you. I compared the Hebrew against the English and found the words are really I am Asherah.
Really?
Asherah Asherah was the shit back it literally says that. It says Asherah was the shit back in those days, but Israel went patriarchal and tried to pretend they never worshipped her, but they did. Remember the old days when you would read the book and the Proverbs and freak out over the female voice which says, I was with him when he created the heavens. You wonder if God was married. Well, he was. His wife was Asherah. I have a lot of other evidence that I uncovered, but if you read this book, I'm sure it will be there as well.
Interesting. I just found it on Kindle, so
It
I
is.
am going to look for this.
You see, the commenter's name was unknown, and it
Right.
was February 22nd, 2020. But I found that
Interesting.
interesting. What I am as I am was actually I am Asherah.
Isn't that interesting? And just like Lilith.
Because did that ever make sense? Like, what the fuck you mean I am that I am? You didn't say Yahweh. You didn't say Lord. You didn't say none of that. What is I am that I am?
That's let me Christianize. Let me give you the Christianized answer. Let me put on my Christian.
Okay, put your Christian hat on.
Let me put my Christian hat on. Let me become pious. This is
Mac
my
Delahunt,
pious.
Matt Delahunt does that. He put his
Yeah,
Christian.
yeah. Let me put my Christian hat on. Well, you see, I am that I am is continually present, meaning that I am, he's always present. So I am that I am continually present. And that's what it means. So there is no past tense. I am always present. Although I was also in the past and in the future, but I am means that I am present and ever present because of my omniscience. That's
Okay,
what that
so
means.
if you bake me a cake and I ask you who gave you the recipe, you gonna tell me I am that I. Are you gonna tell me I
Yes,
am that I am?
I am that I am.
Or are you gonna give me a
Yes.
name?
First of all, as an all powerful God, I don't need to bake a cake. I can
Okay.
just snap it into existence. Okay? No, but that is a good. I like that. That is interesting. You definitely made me want to get that book.
Well, I'm not promoting the book because I haven't read it, but
I
just letting you
understand.
know that was in the comment section, and I was like, oh, let me print this out so I can read it to her.
I just saw another one that's called Asherah, the Queen of Heaven. That's also another book. I haven't.
Mm.
I just saw it, so I haven't read
Actually,
it, but I
he's on
will.
YouTube. The guy
Oh
who
yeah,
made the book, yeah, he's on
he made this
YouTube.
one.
Yeah, and
Well, I
he
just
he
downloaded
talked
it, so I'm
about
going
his
to start reading it.
yeah he talked about his book as well. So I guess I misspoke then because she wasn't the queen of goddesses; she was the queen of heaven. Is
Yeah.
what he
So
said.
when I'm done with this book, we can revisit this topic, and I will update you all as to what I find out. But I am so fascinated by the fact that she was completely removed. How can you
Right.
completely remove someone? That that's so critical. It's so it also makes you wonder what else was removed. If she could be completely removed, and she was at one point crucial, so much so that there were altars to her, there were inscriptions, they were asking for blessings from her. So she was an active and crucial part of their culture and their religious practice. What else have they removed from
And
the Bible?
even today, in modern times, the archaeologists have found the statues, the altars,
Yeah, the altars, the inscription, the bowls, they found
you
artifacts.
can't deny that they worship
Yeah, that she
gods
was more
and
than just a pope.
goddesses.
Yeah,
And
and
even
it goes.
Yahweh has several names too. So it wouldn't be surprising that Asherah has seven names,
True,
several names,
several
because
names,
he's
and it goes
Lord,
back.
Yahweh, Jehovah,
It
Jehovah.
makes sense. Now, of course, looking at it through New Testament eyes, Christians always say when God was creating the heavens and earth, he said, oh, well, he said he always speaks in the plural, whether it was let us make man in our image according to our likeness, regardless of what, through the New Testament eyes, Christians say that it was Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. But what if it wasn't? What if it was a council of gods and goddesses? Let us make man in our image and according to our likeness.
Now, see, when I was younger, being in the Jehovah's Witness, they told us, well, okay, I won't say they. My dad said that when it was we, he was speaking to the angels.
Really? Well,
Yeah.
I was, of course, I was raised Pentecostal, and I was taught, and of course, our interpretation was the right one. I know you were taught that your interpretation was right, but obviously we can't both be right. So mine was right. So yeah,
Okay.
and that's what we were taught. We were taught that when he said, "We let us make God in our image, let us make man in our image and according to our likeness," it was Father, Son, Holy Spirit. That's what we
Yeah.
were taught. Angels were nowhere in there because
But
angels were also
but that's
created
because
beings.
Jehovah's Witnesses don't believe in the Trinity.
Right. That's
So
why.
God
So it's
so God would be speaking with his angels.
angels. So that is interesting. That it's and you know what also is interesting? Everybody's interpretation is the correct interpretation. Because
Exactly.
I was told that our interpretation, I was told by a Jehovah Witness friend of mine, really nice lady, that we misinterpreted the scriptures.
She's
I
she's
guess
so nice.
that's
She told you that you wrong.
yeah. She was very nice and very gently told me that
That
they
you're wrong.
misinterpreted the scriptures, but she said it very nicely. So
Okay.
I guess that is why there are hundreds, if not thousands, of Christian sects, because everybody has a different and if God is not the God of confusion, which is what I was taught, God is not the God
Bruh.
of confusion.
Everything
I
about this is
cannot
confusing.
understand why there are multiple interpretations to the same freaking book.
Well, now I'm gonna
I don't
put
get it.
my Christian hat on.
You do it.
It's confusing to you because those other ones are fake.
How do you know? How do you know? I
those
told a friend
those
of
are
mine.
confusing because they're fake and it's only one. It's only one.
Yeah, right. Mine. As I told a friend of mine, I'm like, you are almost as atheist as I am because you don't believe in 99.9% of gods. You only believe in
Exactly.
one.
You just need to add one
So
more.
yeah, you just like there's just like one that you believe in, and you're atheist to the rest of them. So you're not that much different from me. He did not like that.
Of course
To
not.
quote one of my favorite TikTok ladies, he did not like that. You know what I'm talking about. She's amazing. But
Oh, and then
yeah,
okay. So going back to it was one more thing that I had written down, and I wanted to ask you about it because of your background. Not only the Pentecostal, but you said you had Catholic
yes, I went to
school.
Catholic school.
Catholic school. Okay. So another thing is when speaking about Asherah, they spoke about the rod, Asherah the rod, Asherah the goddess, but also the tree of life. Have you heard that she's also supposed to be represented as the tree of life?
Yes, I when in doing research for this episode, I did come across that, but very this it's amazing how little information you can find on this particular goddess. It is amazing how little information there is. But I did come across that reference, but that was the only reference that I found so far. That she was thought of and referred to as the tree of life, which makes sense as a goddess of as a fertility goddess. It makes
Now I'm just
sense.
getting ready to throw this out here. I'm
Throw
not.
it.
It's just something that came off the top of my head. I'm throwing it
Right.
out there.
Okay.
Everybody else, don't come for me. It's just a thought. But if she is the tree of life, okay, in the Garden of Eden, when God got so angry because Adam and Eve partook from the fruit, was the fruit from the tree of life?
The tree, actually, the tree was the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. That was the tree that they partook from. When he banished them from the garden, and in speaking again to whomever he was speaking to, he said that we shouldn't leave them here because if they partake from the tree of life, they will become as one of us. So they would have the knowledge of good and evil, and then they would be immortal. So
So
the tree of life,
if they went to their mother of heaven,
yeah,
then they would
then
become demigods.
immortal. Yeah, correct. Correct.
Hmm.
There you go.
Things that make you go, hmm.
That's what I'm saying. It makes you wonder if we had the entire story without redactions, without editing, without interpolations, what would that Bible be? And how different would
Another
it be?
Greek myth.
Yeah. would it be considered as scripture, or would it be just considered Jewish myth, Jewish mythology, just like Greek mythology? No one thinks that Venus or Aphrodite were real people. We know that they're mythological figures used to tell a story or used to allegorically send a message. Would the characters in the Bible then be seen as true? Or would they then be seen also as mythological or allegorical because they're feminine, because they're female? Or would it still then be considered scripture and taken as true, and then would life be different? And this is what I think about all ever since I started reading and hearing about her. This is what I keep thinking. This is what I keep thinking about. Would women have had more respect from day one? Would women be treated as the queens that they should? Would women be seen as equals? Because if gods and goddesses were all on the same level, would women and men be seen on the same level? Would it even have I mean, life could think about it. Potentially, life could have been so different if the feminine aspect of divinity wasn't removed.
Right.
And
And
I,
and
I
and it
just
and
keep thinking about it.
it makes me wonder too. Well, not wonder, but to me, it just further shows that it's all man-made because of the fact that they didn't have much control over each other, which is why they caused wars all the time. So they wanted to have control over what what they knew they could, which was a woman. It's just a matter
Yeah,
of control. Another utensil used to control. A lot of people like to say, especially, sometimes when atheists say it, I don't know if I agree with it or not, because I used to say it at first when I first, stopped believing. I was like, oh yeah, they use the Bible for control. But I'm not looking at it as just control over other human beings, which they have used because of the slavery. But I'm also looking at it as used as control women as well.
correct.
But the only thing is, a lot of women are okay with the control as long as it means that they're taken care of. They don't care whether all the women are taken care of. It's just them, which is
Correct.
another selfish act to me.
Because
Because
the Bible was
how you
also,
gonna not care about other women? Just only you.
yeah, because it has been used throughout history to suppress women, keep women quiet, because a woman shouldn't speak in church, a woman shouldn't speak, she should just ask her husband in silence, purity culture. And it sickens me that purity culture is still such a thing in this world that we live in. Talking about nonsense like used vaginas and those kind.
I know. I saw that TikTok. I was like,
Did you see
what is
it?
really
Did you
going
see it?
on?
What is
Yeah.
even happening? What is even happening?
And I'm
You
glad
know,
that one guy is speaking out against it. I'm gonna have to send you the link. There's
yeah.
there's a guy that's speaking out against this. Like
Is it
he is
does he wear
uh
glasses?
yeah,
Yeah, I know I
the older
love
guy,
him. So,
the
oh
villain.
no.
Yeah, this guy is called the villain or something like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, every time he finds a video, he's like, "Let me tell you something." I start laughing.
There are two guys I follow on TikTok, and they, oh my, one is a professor, but they're young. They're younger guys. One is a
Right,
professor. I'm not sure about the other guy. He wears a hoodie a lot and glasses. And boy, when they come across these videos,
right,
they,
right, right.
and they
I,
dissect it, and it's amazing.
I'm gonna see if I could tag you in it right quick. Maybe you could
Okay.
pull it up on because you could do it on your we may be able to hear it on yours. Hold up. I'm going to tag you. See, here's the crazy part. I like so many of his videos that I don't know which one was the one where he talked about the used vagina.
I could not
Hold up.
believe what I was hearing, and the guy, he forcefully said it. If she's coming with a used vagina, the most you can expect is her to respect you, for her to obey you, for her to not speak. And I'm like, what is this man even saying?
And I told the guy too. I said, you better get a backup account because TikTok, you know how TikTok is. Oh, okay. Is this it? Oh, no, that's the one about the. Yeah, he goes after orange face supporters too. Nope, that's not it. Uh, I'm gonna tell you. Hold on, hold on. Okay, everybody. I know you like, yo, you need to come on here. I'm just gonna okay.
I'm now thinking, now that you,
I'm
while you look for that,
I'm sending it to you now.
I, okay,
Go ahead.
I was, the community that I was raised in when I was
Mhm.
younger was predominantly Hindu. So while I was born Christian, and my grandparents were Baptists, different from the Baptists you all have in the US, but what we call spiritual Baptists. My grandparents were Baptists, my parents were Pentecostal. So I was exposed to both those things. But I was raised in, I was born in, the community I was raised into was predominantly Hindu. So I was very familiar with a lot of the Hindu practices, which is why I have an idea about the goddesses and, their vision of gods and their festivals and stuff. And then I went to a Catholic school, right? So then that was another set of religion. And at one point, one of my very best friend was Nation of Islam. So I got, a lot of information about the Nation of Islam.
Mhm.
uh, but then, and when I was in my very very early 20s, I got saved. Did I tell you I got saved at a Benny Hinn crusade?
Oh
Did I ever
no.
tell you that? Oh yes. Oh my God, I'm such a shameful
He
religious
laid his
cat.
hands on you.
Yeah, oh, I was slain in the spirits and everything like that. And you couldn't convince me otherwise. So I'm just thinking, I've had a hell of a religious journey, and now I'm an atheist. Imagine I went through all those religions, including some new ageism in there,
Yeah,
and
me too.
still ended up being a non-believer,
Exactly.
and none of it
You-
stuck.
I sent it to you. You got it now?
Oh, sorry, I was busy thinking about my religious journey. I
He
didn't
was
even check.
reminiscent.
Yeah. I was just thinking about my religious journey. Oh, it was. Oh yeah. Here we
You
go.
remember him? I mean, you follow him?
Oh, this guy. I love him.
He
I
tells it
love
like it
him.
is.
Yeah, he does. I love him. Oh my goodness. Women will never need you. They just won't. They'll want you, but they will never need your motherfucking ass. I love him so much. I just love his voice. I love his delivery, and he knows his stuff. He knows
Yeah.
his stuff. Yeah. Oh, this is good. This is so good.
And see, the thing is, it's so many people in their echo chamber, like saying, "Yeah, women should fall down to our feet and do this, and women supposed to be doing that," but they never take themselves. So for him, which I don't know what he does in his personal life, but for him to
Yeah.
be the one of the ones to come up and say, wait a minute, you're wrong, and this is why you're wrong," I can admire that.
And I absolutely hate giving these. Oh, he's alive. Absolutely hate giving these kind of
Did you
accounts
push the did you push the button?
because I wanted to see how many followers he had, right? But
He
but he's
showed up in
freaking
his
live
life.
right now. Oh my God, he's
Oh,
freaking live right now. Can you believe it?
the guy that
And
said it.
he has, yeah, the guy that was spewing the nonsense. He has 209,000 followers.
And they,
He has two
his
hundred and
and the
nine
comments,
thousand
yeah.
followers.
Which is why I'm glad the other guy spoke up against him.
And looking at his live, no, I'm not listening to the nonsense he's saying now, but looking at his live responses, there are females saying yes and agreeing with whatever nonsense, and I'm sure it's pure trash that he's speaking right now. There are a lot of them that, I mean, a lot of them are male, but I am seeing female profiles that are agreeing with what he's saying.
Well, that's because That's a whole nother show. We're gonna have to do a
It
show on
is.
the pick on
Yeah,
the
we will.
pygmies, because that's exactly what they are. For those of you who don't know, a pygmy is
Let me come out
somebody
of
who
this
will
profile.
agree with nonsense, somebody wrong, just because they feel like they should be the one who's being picked to be the girlfriend, the wife, or whatever over someone else. So they do stupid stuff to be picked, which is why they have the name Pick Me. Now you know what
And
pick me is.
thank you. And some of it, I'm not saying all of it, but some of it is also that some females have really and truly been brainwashed into not knowing their actual value and worth outside of being covered by a man. I was raised to believe that the man was your covering, right? He was the head of the home, um, and he would cover you, which is which was the man's role. And as a woman, you would submit, another word that I despise, submit. And that's how I was raised. And I was
Mhm.
raised this way, not by men telling me this, but by women, maternal figures, my own mom, my grandmom, and other maternal figures around me telling me things like this. And this started from a young age. I'm talking about still during my formative years. For instance, if I were to not go to Sunday school and be in church with the adults, and I would hear this message would be reinforced. So
Mhm.
and then there were, and the thing about the way the church is set up, there were youth groups, there were female, then there were times when the females alone would get together and have female youth meetings. And then there were women's studies, and women's studies were nothing more than teaching you how to be a nice, docile, subservient, submitted wife or woman in general. Well, obviously your sole goal in this life was to be the kind of woman that a Christian man, who apparently was the gem, would want to marry. And I mean, a good man does not want any free thinking, loud mouth, woman that has an opinion and a thought process of her own. And this was reinforced again, not necessarily only by males, but this was reinforced by females.
Yeah,
And it had to be reinforced in them by other females as well.
exactly.
So some of it is yes, and it all comes back, and some of these accounts that I follow, it all comes back to patriarchy. Even women
Exactly.
that believe this type of nonsense, it all comes back to being raised in a patriarchal society. It's all part of it.
And I have to say too, when I was a kid, I was in Jehovah's Witnesses, and it was the 80s. So it was a different time period than what's going on right now,
Yes.
but it was the same thing. We had to, i- in my words, we were being bred to be a wife, and that's
Yeah.
all. They didn't allow you to go to college. They didn't allow you to talk about further education because the end of the
Uh-huh.
world was coming. Everything
Right.
was the end times. It's always the end times. So as a kid growing up, number one, I was told that I wasn't supposed to make it to a teenager because it would be the end of the world.
Right.
But as I got older and older and older, okay, well, now you're supposed to learn how to, you're supposed to know how to cook. You're supposed to know how to take care. I was taking care of people's kids since I was 10. And it was because it was my brothers and sisters first. Then it was the neighbors. Then, of course, in the 80s, your first job was babysitting. And then after that, my mom had a daycare center. So I always had somebody's kid attached to
Yeah.
me. Then when I
And
had
a
my
lot of
own
us.
kids, then it was on. But the 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 congregation always had women as being below. So even when it came to even when it came to things like speaking up at the meetings, you would have it where they had Bible study. The man would go up to the front and do what's equivalent to your sermon.
Right.
The
Oh my
dogs.
goodness. Oh.
we would have what's equivalent to your service. I'm sorry. We would have what would be equivalent to in church you would call the sermon. It would be equivalent to the sermon. Then for the women, they would have what's called it would be a watchtower study after the sermon. So after the man came up to the front and did the scripture and everything and did the sermon, then they would have what's called a watchtower study. Now during a watchtower study, it would be two rows, and you can raise your hand after you've read the watchtower. You can raise your hand to make a comment. The person at the front of the stage, which was a man, would read off questions from what you were supposed to have read, and you raise your hand. Something as simple as being able to touch the microphone. You weren't supposed to touch the microphone because you're the woman. So you just have them bring the microphone to you, and then you say what you got to say, and they would be like, "Oh, that's good, sister so and so," and then everybody would be happy because you said something. If you did not comment during this, if you didn't comment, then they would have a talk with you in the back. We're like, "I noticed you didn't speak during the, you know."
So let me ask you
But
something. In the Jehovah's Witnesses, were there ever women, female leaders, pastors?
oh, no,
Um,
no,
no.
no, no, you
Oh,
can't do that.
really?
It's only for the men.
Because I remember, as a matter of fact, the church that my husband used to go to was led by a woman, and I remember asking my sister-in-law at the time. Asking my sister-in-law, I'm going to say at the time, asking my sister-in-law, how is that even possible? It just seemed it went against the Bible for me, because the Bible clearly states that women shouldn't speak in church.
Yeah,
But they
when I was
said, I can't remember what the I must ask her again. How come? And see what she says as to
when
how
when I
come.
was younger, my one of my best friends, her mother was a pastor at a church, at their church. They had their own church. And I remember I asked my dad, I said, "Well, how come uh Tanya's mother's a pastor?" He said, "Everybody don't know the Bible."
I will ask my sister-in-law how come they have a female pastor, and I will tell you all at the next our next
Yeah.
podcast
Yeah, he literally
what the
did. He said
response
everybody
was.
don't know the Bible.
Oh my! And they were also Jehovah's Witnesses.
No, no, no,
Is it
no.
right?
My
Oh,
friend, no. No, my
of course
friend
not.
was one of the only friends I could have that wasn't a Jehovah's Witness. And that
So
was
your friends had to
because,
be Jehovah's Witnesses as well,
yeah, yeah. That one, Tanya, she wasn't a Jehovah's Witness. She had it's a disease called lupus.
right?
And so since my parents knew her mom, then they let us be friends.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
And she's
Okay.
since passed away though from
Oh,
that. Yeah.
I did not realize it was like that. Oh my
Yeah.
goodness. Wow. I don't think I would have made it as a Jehovah's Witness, because even when I was a Christian, I was pretty into with female empowerment and feminism, and even when I was a Christian, which is why that scripture always rubbed me the wrong way. That whole women submit to your husband, and that whole scripture, it really always rubbed me the wrong way, because but our church had a way to describe what submission meant. It was not being a doormat. It was recognizing that your husband had a particular role, and that you as his wife had a particular role, because Eve was created as a helpmate for Adam, and as such that was also our role as a
But
wife.
even using that word though, helpmate doesn't still doesn't equate to submission and you do what I say. That's not how I
Correct.
ever that's not how I ever looked at helpmate. To me, helpmate was somebody who would be along with you. And we have a guest that just popped up right now. So
Oh,
we're
we
going
do.
to bring Ryan to the to the everyone. We're going to introduce Ryan. One moment, please.
Hi
Hello,
there.
Ryan.
I'm good. I am so sorry. I was waiting for the link and waiting for the link, and I don't know why, but it didn't show up in my email, but I got it in my TikTok, and I was like, oh my God.
Well, we
Thank
have
you.
been on for an hour.
Thank you
I
all.
appreciate you coming.
Oh,
And
absolutely.
we what we did was we brought up a lot of things about Asherah. Actually, we had moved from Asherah. We have moved from Asherah, and we started talking about how misogyny, basically why they wrote out Asherah. And
Mm.
we talked about how in modern times right now, the religions will say that a woman should be submissive. And then Fee was saying that she never liked that word, do as I'm. What did you say just a minute
I
ago?
don't like the word submit, and I
Mm.
do not like the word obedience, obey, disobey. I do not like those words. I don't like them
I
spoken
don't
about
blame you.
women. I don't like them spoken about children. I don't like the word obedience and submission and submit rubs me the absolute wrong way.
Me too. It
And
really
And it
then
always
does.
has.
and then she asked if Jehovah's Witnesses allowed women to be preachers. Go ahead, Ryan.
No, nope, not at all. Second class citizen is what I consider it. Really, they kind of
For
just
those
treat
of
you as you're just there to kind of help the man be the one who guides the congregation. You got to be quiet.
and for
Right.
everybody
So,
that's watching, Ryan is also XJW, just like I am.
oh,
Yeah.
okay.
We broke free from the cult. Hopefully,
And it's
anyway.
do you know what is interesting? A lot of okay, so I was as we know, I was raised Pentecostal.
Okay.
Um, but Pentecostals have no problem calling Jehovah's Witnesses, Seven Days Adventists, anybody else a cult. But there is a but there is
Yep.
nothing more cult like than a Pentecostal
Yeah.
church.
It's so weird how other cults will point the finger because Jehovah's Witnesses would do the same thing, don't you
Right.
think? We would do
Yeah.
the same thing, pointing the finger at other people. There, we don't drink Kool Aid.
Yeah.
They
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 do.
Right.
drink Kool Aid. We
Yeah.
Exactly.
don't. Meanwhile, we're all you know
And it's so interesting. That's what I was telling
getting
her,
high on our own supply,
on
basically.
so it's just religion is so freaking fractured and oh my god,
It really
religion.
is. And
It is.
it's so women are so now, well, at least I think, are so far removed. I mean, I do see some churches that are more progressive and women are able to, they're put in positions of power and authority, but generally speaking, it seems as though to be I think a good Christian, according to most of these Christians, would be for a woman to be submissive and to be obedient to her husband. And for me, I don't get that from the Bible because a lot of that's been put in there like years after. Like this is like second, third century Christian stuff. That's not the first century Christians weren't like that. So
Yeah.
it's weird that we can be so far removed from whoever these Jesus worshipers originally were, if that makes
Right.
any sense.
Yeah.
And I know
And
you
what's
missed it earlier, but I wanted to reread again. There was a book online on Amazon. You missed it earlier. We spoke about this, but I'll just tell you again.
Yeah, please do.
There was a book on Amazon, and it was called History's Vanquished Goddess Asherah, God's Wife, the Goddess Asherah, Wife of Yahweh, okay, say it.
archaeological?
Okay, and
That's what
It's such a long
historic,
title.
it is.
historical aspects of Syro-Palestinian. And the reason why I printed this out was because there was a comment left in the comment section. I'm gonna read it again so you can hear it, and
Okay.
you let me know what you think about it.
Okay.
The commenter said, "My research led me here. My intuition always jackpots. I figured out that I am was just a bullshit as it sounded. When Moses asked God who to tell the Egyptians sent him to let his people go, God answered to tell them, I am that I am sent you. I compared the Hebrew and the English and found these words are really I am Asherah. Asherah was the shit back in the days, but Israel went patriarchal and tried to pretend they never worshipped her, but they did. Remember the old days when you would read the book Proverbs and freak out over the female voice that says, I was with him when he created the heavens. You wondered if God was married. Well, he was. His wife was Asherah.
That's a lot of comment. But the thing is what I do know, because I have also read what they're saying. So they're saying when Moses asked God what his name, what should I say, who sent me? He says, Ayer, Asher, Aya, which means I am that I am, or whatever, however you want to translate that to be. But Asher is in there. The word Asher is in there. I
Uh-huh.
mean, I don't speak the language, so I couldn't tell you if that is literally like her name within that holy name. I don't know, but that is what was said. So that's not necessarily wrong. And really, all that God said was just say that I am that I am. So that could have been El that said that.
And we were talking about that
You
too,
know what I'm
how
saying?
El
That's
was
not a
still,
name,
Very
and
that's
we were
true.
talking about that earlier too, how El and Yahweh, was it another name for Yahweh, correct?
well, so El is an actual god from the Canaanite pantheon
Oh, so
who,
another God. Okay.
yeah, so he came before Yahweh did, but at some point Yahweh does kind of assume the role that El did. As I mean, there's just a lot of stuff happening back then in that time, a lot of mingling, wars, whatever causes the synchronistic things to happen, I don't freaking know, but that's a lot of what it is: travel, war, trade, etc. And eventually the Yahwist cult overtook El and the other gods, kind of ate them up, really. Took all their
And
attributes and everything.
that's what Fee was mentioning earlier, that Yahweh was the God of war originally.
I don't know for sure, but it seems to be that he was a god of war. I mean, if you look at really what the first couple books are, it's really just like a book of war. Like, this is, we came to here, we destroyed that, we can't, I mean, it's not all true, but that's really kind of what it is. It's like, this is what our God has accomplished. So it kind of makes sense. I do believe that he was a god of like metallurgy. I think he came from Edom somewhere. I don't know exactly where, but it sounds like that's how he kind of came up through the area from the southern up to the north.
Well,
And
think
I'm
about it this way.
Go ahead.
Um, in a time in that time, thousands and thousands of years ago, if I wanted to prove that my God was the more powerful God, the best way to do that would be war,
Right.
because they didn't have peace treaties like the way we do. They didn't have diplomacy. But if my God is the more powerful God, then he can do all these things. War
Right.
was the way that we spoke, because I mean, let's face it, it's not like they were as diplomatic. You know what I mean? So my
Yeah.
God is powerful enough. This is what my God can do. He's not like your God, that maybe your God could, I don't know, grow some crops, but my God could do
Yeah.
that
But they
plus
did. Yeah.
destroy. You know what I mean? And the more they added to the myth, the more he snowballed into becoming this all powerful. But he didn't start out that way. Yahweh did not
Right.
start out as the almighty, omniscient, omnipotent God that he has become. And we see that in most myths. The further
Absolutely.
away from the original story you move, it's just like Jesus. When you read the earliest manuscripts about Jesus, he's a man.
Yeah.
He's
Yeah.
he's born. I mean, Mark doesn't even have a birth story. Mark didn't
Right.
even think it was important enough to talk
Nope.
about how he was born, because who the hell cares? It
Right.
wasn't
That wasn't
until
important to
it
them.
wasn't important. But by the time we get to John, he was always, Matthew and Luke start talking about his birth, so they give him a birth narrative. But he wasn't. He can be born of a normal woman like you and me. He had to be
Right. So they got
born
the virgin birth.
the virgin birth, and then they will recognize. But by the time we reach to John, he always was. So the
Yeah.
further
He's the
away,
word.
he's
Yep.
the word, and he was the word that always was. And so the further away we get, the the further down the line, the more mythological he becomes. And it's the same thing with Yahweh. He started
Exactly the
out just
same.
like a normal minion god. He was one of the other gods, the god of lightning, the god of thunder, the god of war, the god of
Yep.
crops, the god of whatever. But eventually, over thousands of years, he became this omnipotent God. But I think if the original Canaanites and the original Israelites heard about the Yahweh we worship, they wouldn't even recognize it as the
No,
Yahweh they worship. I don't think it's the same Yahweh at all.
I agree with you. I really, really do. I think
Yeah.
he's changed so much. Jesus has changed some. Everything has changed. It's so far removed from what
Agreed.
from what it was. Now
Yeah.
Yahweh fills all the gaps. If there's a gap, he fills it. And if you're
Yeah.
anything outside of that, then you're demon or you're the evil. You're the other. You're of
Yeah.
Satan.
That is
And
right. Yeah, that is right.
before, I mean, back in ancient. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to. Did I cut you off,
No, I
Sonny?
was gonna tell Fita to let you in on what she came up with Jesus. Jesus was actually
Oh, a demigod.
Oh,
It's
hey,
my thought that
tell me
Jesus
all
is a
about it.
demigod because if we okay, so a
because he was
demigod
born of
is
a god and a human. That's a
a human and
demigod
a god.
according to Greek
Jesus's
mythology.
mother, think about it. Jesus's mother was Mary. She was human.
I mean, you're not. I mean, that's yeah.
And
Wow.
Jesus's father was God. So does that
Right.
not make him a demigod? I
It would
swear,
have to be.
I swear. Ask one of your if you have Christian friends, ask them that if you want to see them lose their freaking minds.
I'm actually gonna do that. I like that. I think that might
Ask them.
just.
They will lose their
Ryan
mind.
Ryan is the
Oh,
queen of TikTok.
demigod,
And
huh?
yeah, and let them explain to you why he's not a demigod.
Right.
How is he any
Oh,
different from Hercules?
yeah.
Explain that. Yeah, it's
I
crazy.
just learned there's even like connections with like the gentleman I was just talking to, Pat. He was just kind of making some connection with Hercules and some of the old and ancient like Israelite like cousins. I was like, what the heck? I didn't even know. But it's interesting when you look at literature of the same time, when you look at when Jesus was being written, that kind of stuff, there's
Mhm.
other people writing other stories of similar gods and demigods. And it's like it makes sense that,
Yeah,
this guy was created at some point. I mean, it just kind of makes sense. It just to me doesn't make sense that it's still like this believed in. Like it makes sense that all that happened. I mean, that's just kind of like how it goes, but that it's still being perpetuated and it's like believed and it's not
right.
myth. Like Roman, oh, that's all mythology.
Yeah,
Norse,
Greek.
oh,
Greek.
that's
Yeah,
mythology.
Greek.
Oh no,
Oh,
Jesus.
Jesus. Now, Jesus.
How dare you? Oh my God.
That's
It's
the true
real.
one.
Take me.
I'm being persecuted for my persecution. You know, they love crying persecution.
It's kind of just how it seems to go. I don't know
Yeah,
why,
and
but
there was the thing is there was a lot of they didn't call it plagiarism because it's just what it was. There were a lot of
yeah,
intermingling. It wasn't
yeah.
necessarily plagiarism. It's just what it was.
You
It was just
borrowed ideas and
you made them
it's just
yours.
right.
You switched them up a little bit. And as we said earlier, as I was telling Sunny earlier, there I do not think that when the ancient Israelites or the original Greeks were writing these stories, they intended them to be anything more than just stories. We
Yeah,
have made it
Exactly.
into these holy
yeah.
scriptures, but I do not think it was intended. And this is the example that I use. I do not think Paul's letters were meant to be anything other than
No.
correspondence from one person to
That's
another,
like reading somebody's diary.
and then calling it scripture. And
Except
then,
for like when he says, "Hey, share this with the," like if he said, "Okay, he wants you to let them know," but that doesn't mean it's meant to be like you said, it's not meant to be scripture.
can you imagine if in 1,000 years somebody's looking at this podcast and they're like, "Oh my God, these goddesses are so on point. Let us now worship them." And it's like,
I'm
and then,
channeling
yeah,
in the year 3033 when they see me, just channeling. I am a god.
yeah,
Trust
and we do
me.
it alone.
Trust me.
Trust me, I said so. 'Cause
I wrote it.
I
and I
wrote it,
talked
so
about it.
therefore it is true, because that's how the
Therefore, it's
Bible
true.
works anyway. So it has
Exactly.
to be true.
And in 3033, when women are in power, it's definitely going to make sense to see like queens, representing. So yes, this makes sense
Very
for the
true. There you
future.
go.
Exactly.
Does this make us prophets? I think we're prophets.
Oh, yes,
Future
I think
prophet.
so. Yes, we are actually. We're prophets. Now be careful. We're not supposed to prophesy, but
Right. Oh,
anyway.
I see what you did there. I see what you did there.
How
I
dare
get
we?
it.
All right, Ryan. And so, since you did miss the first part, we're going to repeat.
I'm so
We're going to
sorry.
repeat how we got up to where we are now.
Okay.
We were just bringing up why do you? We'll ask you. Why do you think Asherah was erased then, and why do you think that it's such a problem with misogyny now?
Well, I just think first off, I think the Yahwist cult was just male centered. It was just males, and if it was a god of war where men who fought worship this god, I mean, of course, it would be more male dominated. But it seems to me, at first, if the Bible is accurate at all, when you read um, Solomon and David, the people who were chosen by God, they worshipped Asherah. So for them, it was just normal. It was commonplace. Yahweh took on El's attributes. He took on his wife. They worshiped them side by side at the cult, other places. So to me, it seems like the reason she got removed was for political reasons, because that seems to be the time she was erased, like the reforms. So why politically would you need to start erasing the goddess? Seems to me you want to remove their power. Why do you want to remove their power? They must have had too much. I mean, that's the only thing that I can think of that you would remove her. I personally
That
don't
would
see
make
any
sense to
other
make the
reasons.
cult more powerful.
I mean, it's just a guess from somebody who's deconstructing and from what I've read, but she was worshipped happily. The women in the Bible say, we worship, we bake bread, we burn incense, sing songs, whatever they did, dance. They had a good life when they did that for Asherah. And it wasn't until they stopped that things got bad. They had famine. So to me, it seems the women were like, no, hey, this makes us happy. We want to do this. And even their husbands were like, no, we've been doing this, supporting them, and everything's been golden. So even their husbands stood by them and said it was okay. So just looking at that scripture, the only thing I can think of was like, you don't want the women to have their power, to have their attachment. You want them to have to go through people to find source, because that's kind of just how I see it. Is everybody wants to connect to whatever's up there, whatever they believe. So if you remove the woman's ability to connect to their goddess source, now they have to go through priests, men, other people, because now they don't have that direct connection.
Right.
Again, this is all just someone deconstruct. I mean, of course, there's probably way, way more to it than that, but long and story short, that's how I see it.
And it does tie back into what we said earlier, Sunny, with reference to how different society at large, Western culture, would be if women's power wasn't removed.
Right.
Because we know that the Bible had a lot to do with everything that has happened that over the past couple thousand years. And it goes into what she was saying. If politically the woman's power wasn't removed, how much different would society at large be today, historically and today, if the goddess was not removed, if the balance was there? I have to think just looking at balanced relationships and what it brings to households, that the world must have been different. Whether or not it was myth, the perception that it was real
Exactly.
would it would have had to be
Right.
different.
Exactly. Like me look at now, like I don't really believe much of anything. So it doesn't,
Right.
but to, even I've said before, like superheroes, to have a female superhero or a transgender superhero, to
Right.
to have a black superhero, to have a superhero that looks, acts, thinks like you is important. It's really cool to have. I mean, everybody likes it. So imagine if you have a god who represents you, or goddess who represents you. That's empowering, believe it or not.
It
So
is.
when you take that away, I think it's detrimental. Um, I mean, like I've made videos like before about Jezebel, just for instance. We don't realize how powerful she was back in the day. She had seals that you use for like writing letters, doing business and stuff like that. Like we don't realize like how, I mean, she was running shit. You know what I mean? And I mean, during times when the Bible was literally being writ, she was running shit, but she was treated as like, oh, this
And what is
horrible
she now?
woman.
What
Right.
is she
She
now?
worshiped Asherah. She,
Yeah.
she worshiped these other gods, but she probably worshiped Yahweh too. Like for her, it was
And
probably acceptable to welcome these other people in.
even a name that is still known to this day. Jezebel is a name that's known. It is known in
Yeah.
such a negative. I had this conversation with my son. It is known in such a negative light.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody knows Jezebel as a powerful woman, or
Mm-mm.
knows her as what is she known as? The
Harlot,
whore.
The
the
Yeah,
whore of
makeup
the
in
whore
the
Babylon.
of
yeah.
Babylon. They equate
Yeah.
with the
Gussied
whore
up.
of Babylon. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
or she's the one. She's the painted lips, and she distracts men, of course. And you know what I mean.
Right.
Yeah.
There's nothing positive said.
I
It's
didn't
even like,
even I didn't
think about.
realize it's even like a. If I apologize if I'm not saying it, misogynoir, that
Hmm.
like Jezebel is you. I didn't even. I just learned. I literally learned that today. That term is used towards like people of color, like specifically to be like even. I'm like, oh my god, like what the? I'm sorry that like that. It's just freaking mind
Yeah.
blowing. Like how they
Yeah,
can take a powerful woman and try to turn her into something nasty.
yeah. Think about, it's like Mary Magdalene. What do we think about when we hear Mary Magdalene? One thing.
Reformed prostitute with
But the Bible
demons.
never said that's what she is.
Yeah.
Nope.
It never says that's what she is.
Nope.
Exactly.
The church fathers have made her become a reformed prostitute.
Mm-hmm.
But she was not. She was not the woman that was caught in adultery. She was not. She
Nope.
was not. The same book I told you about by Dr. Bart Ehrman,
Oh yeah, Bart Ehrman.
yeah, they speak about Mary Magdalene and her oranges and who she was, and she was not the prostitute
Mm-mm.
that was called. But when we hear Mary Magdalene, it's not a compliment. Someone calls you Mary Magdalene, it's not a compliment.
Well, did you know that? What I don't know because I'm not sure what. I'm sorry because I'm talking like Sonny knows some
I
of the
know.
stuff I've talked about, but you haven't. I apologize.
It's
But
fine. It's okay.
I just learned that Mary Magdalene literally means Mary the Tower or Mary the Magnificent. It's not where she's from. Has nothing to do where she's from. Yeah, her name
I didn't
is.
know
I
that.
didn't have
Okay,
any
well, yeah,
idea.
so I just read this paper. You can read it on JSTOR.org. I don't know, or .com, I forget. But anyway, so basically what happened is Pope Gregory, I mean, he was the one who kind of like fucked around with her name
Yeah.
and tried to paint her as the other woman that supposedly comes to wash Jesus' feet. But even still in that chapter says nothing, anything sexual. It just says a sinner. It says nothing about. So even if you tried to say that that's who Mary was, the woman who washed Jesus' feet, that was the reformed prostitute, that oopsie. once,
You lost your
once
light. Light turned off, you guys. There
That was
sorry,
it
pretty though.
is.
my lights
It
automatically
was
go
too
out.
powerful. The lights went off.
Oh, but yeah, so Mary Magdalene is painted as this prostitute by this like pope in the like 4th century, I forget, 4th 5th century. But anyway, Jesus calls her Mary the Tower, Mary Magdalene, which literally means citadel, fortress, tower, magnificent. And she was the one to watch over the flock. And there's even a possibility it's referring to a scripture, an old scripture that talks about Migdal Eder, whereas the royals would have their flocks, like the rich people would have their flocks. That's where they would be at this place called Migdal Eder or whatever. So that's probably more than likely what he was referring to. She was the one, the righteous one that watched over the flock. Like, boom,
Wow.
mind blown. Yeah.
Yeah.
Isn't that cool? But now she's a reformed prostitute.
Yeah, now she's a reformer, and that's it. And that's all we know about. That's all we know about her. She's a
That's
reformer.
it.
That's
Yep.
it. That's it. That's
Not
it.
much else. Yeah,
Yeah.
she's not. She's a woman, so therefore, there could have been so many more women that were important.
Exactly.
But just
More
because they're women,
important.
they're not written about. So therefore,
Yeah.
they're written out of history.
Yep.
In a way,
Yeah, you are correct.
sadly.
And I want to ask something here. We are at an hour and a half, so we're going to wrap it up pretty soon. But I do want to ask this question. And I'm putting on half Christian hat, half atheist hat here when I ask this question. Now we're going to have a lot of people saying, "Well, if you think it's all stories, and you don't believe in the Bible, well, why are you using these scriptures?
Oh,
Why are you using the scriptures that you use if you don't really believe it?" Now I'm going to start off here, and then I'll let you two answer. But for me, I use the scriptures because I have to come down to where you are to show you what's wrong with what's going on, and the
mhm,
reason why religion is being used against not only people of different nationalities, but also being women, against women as well.
mhm.
Uh, Fiona, what would you say
And
against the people who say, "Why are you using the scriptures if you're atheist?"
yeah, but for all of us, and for a lot of people that listen, and a lot of people that are atheists, at one point we were devout believers, or believers of some sort. I
Yep.
mean, I know I was. I
Mhm.
believed that, as Jesus would say, every jot and every tittle.
Mm.
Um, so I mean, it did so much harm that I think it's important for people to know that they are not alone.
Exactly.
It Although now we know, okay, this may be myth and it was silly and it doesn't, but it did a lot of harm for the how much ever years we would have been involved with, and using these scriptures, and had these scriptures used against us, because as women, as we said earlier, when our maternal figures or mother figures, well, I was raised Pentecostal, so I did have, at one point I did have a female preacher, the pastor's wife was
Oh,
also allowed to preach, yeah, in my
okay.
church. And she was the one that would counsel the young ladies, and it's these same scriptures that he would use. So obviously, why can't we use the script? It's like a book, we're using it as a reference. Why can't we
Yeah.
refer it? We don't have to believe in it to refer to
Exactly.
it, but we can use it to help other people get a voice and deconstruct, just the way we are. Because I mean, we are all still deconstructing, I think. I know I am.
I
Ryan?
think we will be for a very long time
Yeah,
deconstructing. Um,
yeah.
I agree with you 100%. I pretty much just agree with everything. No, but really, it is. I mean, I think it is. We're coming down to their level. We're using the
Yeah.
evidence that we have, which is their book. So, and I do that in my head. I'm like, why am I even doing this? But it's the only way that I'm able to reach them. Like, a lot of Christianity is just this helicoptering, reaching the scriptures and just, oh, look, this is what I reach in a script. Oh, this is what I believe. I could do that too. We could all
Right.
just helicopter into scriptures and just believe stuff. But I hope that when I kind of maybe give you a broader picture, I can show you like, oh, maybe we shouldn't just pull verses here today. Maybe we really do need to have a broader scope of things. And hopefully, maybe by getting down on that level, I can do that and help people deconstruct. understand better, or at least question, because if we can get people to question,
Right.
we're opening that door.
Right.
Yeah. So that's
And
why
the
I do it.
and the goal is not ever to make somebody be atheist. We're not trying to do that. We're
Mm-mm,
just trying
no.
to make you realize that what that Bible, Quran, whatever it is that you believe in, is being used improperly. It's harming other people. There are continuous amounts of people who are saying this is what happened while I was quote unquote a believer, and it's
Right.
wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And I wish when I was younger, I wished I'd have known what I know now.
Oh, yeah.
So yeah, so do I.
Amen.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And and I really think that if that's why I think that people don't want us to know, because I think we'd have been fucking powerhouses. But could you imagine, like,
Man,
rewind 20 years?
Yep. I
Whoo-hoo,
know.
where
Oh
I
my
would be
God.
right now, I'd be pulling out scripture and just like, so who knows where we're going to be in another 20 years. So if we can help these young kids be where we are, I think that's
right.
really cool.
Yeah. Agreed.
Yeah.
Save some time and pain, maybe.
And
Lots of
trauma.
pain and
My God.
trauma.
And
And that's
trauma.
Boom.
another thing too, mental health. A lot of people, especially in religions, do not address mental health the way they should.
No,
They
no,
use
No,
the
no.
because it's all
scripture.
demons. It's all
It's
demons.
demons. They tell them to pray it away.
Ew,
It's all
It's
demons.
it is.
bad information all
It's
the way around.
it's demons and spirits. I remember there
Yeah.
was spirits of depression, spirits of anxiety, spirits of this. It was demons of that. If
Mm-hmm.
you had anger issues, it wasn't that you were raised in a poor environment because children obey your parents
Right.
because it's right. You know what I mean? So it wasn't that you had anger issues. You just had a spirit of anger, and they would pray it
Right.
out. I'm telling you, it was
Ooh,
it was
pray
it
it
was
out.
terrible.
Oh,
They would
it
pray it. They would
is.
pray it out.
Hmm.
It was terrible. My brother who was atheist before me, he's still um not he's still deconstructing his trauma in
Mm.
therapy every single week
Yep. I'm not
because
And
surprised.
it was
some of them tell
terrible. It
them
was a
don't go
terrible
to
feeling.
therapy. Some religions
Yeah.
say don't go to
Oh, yeah.
therapy.
Well, Jehovah's Witnesses were kind of like that back in the day. They kind of
Yeah.
poo-pooed it. It's not until recently that they've kind of been like, oh, okay, I guess you can go to like speak to somebody as long as they're approved.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, we could have only spoken to other Christian
Mm.
counselors.
Yep.
And then
Hmm.
how comfortable would you really feel talking about if they're just going to accuse you of having a demon anyway, or a spirit?
Yeah. No thanks. Nope.
Yeah.
Yeah. What are you gonna, like?
I'm
Okay, I've
going.
been really anxious, and then they're gonna just throw the well. As I told you last week, be anxious for nothing. Be anxious for nothing, but in all things, through prayer and supplication, make your request known to God. And the God
Oh
who
yeah.
hears, see, I can still quote scripture, and the God who hears above will answer your prayer. And
Oh
that helps,
yeah.
that does absolutely nothing for someone with
Nothing for your
anxiety.
situation.
Trust me, but
Exactly.
makes you more
Take your
anxious.
medicine,
Trust me.
go to therapy, do what you're supposed
Yeah.
to do.
Like, why aren't you helping me?
Yeah.
I
Yeah,
don't
God
feel
never
any
helped.
better.
I don't feel, yeah, he never helped my anxiety.
Mm-mm, not me
Never.
either. Trust me.
Yeah.
Still doesn't. Gotta take pills for this shit.
Yeah, there you go. And breathe and
Yes.
try,
Breathing.
just try to cope.
Yep.
It's ridiculous. Yeah.
I think I'm gonna have to we're gonna have to write that down when we talk about mental health, and we're gonna have to try to get Shannon Q with us.
Oh yeah, I love Shannon. I would love
Yeah,
Try to
so do
see
that.
if
I.
we
I
could get
love
Oh
Shannon.
yeah,
it.
yeah.
She's a
That'd be
celebrity
amazing.
now, so
I know.
Love
Yes.
Shannon. That's awesome. We need female like atheist celebrities. I think that's great.
Yeah, that'd be
yeah.
amazing.
Hey,
And
that's the
she's
2022.
freaking smart too. She takes no prisoners
No.
in the nicest way.
Yeah,
In
she
the
handles
nicest way.
ass.
Yeah,
She hands their ass back to
yeah, yeah. In the nicest way. It's
them in the
amazing.
nicest way.
Yeah, she's so nice. But she will kick your ass. Don't come
Uh-huh.
around. She will kick your
She does.
yeah. in the nicest way.
in the nicest way.
All right, we are coming to the end now, and I want you to be able to leave your. I'm going to put, of course, let me put this out there. For this show today, of course, when you go to the secularminority.com website, we're going to have the show notes and the links to where to find everyone. Ryan, can you let everybody know where to find you? Because you are now on YouTube.
Oh, that's right. I am on YouTube. I forgot. So on YouTube, I'm Cult Tastic, Cultastic, and I believe there's somebody else with that name, and they've got like ton of followers. That ain't me. And on TikTok, I'm tax.the.churches. So tax the churches.
I like
All
it.
right.
Yeah, tax them.
And and we already have, well, you can say it again, Fee, where they can find you.
Yeah, because I want to follow you. So you make sure I'm writing it
You
down.
can now I need to warn you, all of my contents on social media is fitness related because I am a fitness person.
Oh, okay, that's
Yeah.
fine. I like
So I'm
fitness.
just good. So all social media channels, I am Fit Diva Fee.
Fit Diva
Diva
Fee,
Fee.
Fi.
Yeah, Fi.
Okay, I'll
Yeah.
be fine.
Yeah. I'll be following you too.
Thanks.
Making connections, getting ready
That's
for
right.
2023 when we're all goddesses.
We got goddess energy flowing.
All right. Thank you, Fiona and Ryan, for taking the time out to be in this podcast today. It will be showing on the website. It will be on most major podcast streams, and it will also be on YouTube.
Yay. Thank you for
And
having
do
me.
you're welcome. And do either one of you have any one last minute sentence you want to say before we wrap it up?
No,
I'm
No?
good.
Okay.
no, I
Oh,
think
now
I'm
everybody's
honored
quiet.
that you even asked. I'm honored that you asked me to even be here, and I apologize for being late. Thank you so much.
Oh,
it's
that's fine.
fine. It's fine. This was
That's
great.
fine.
Yeah,
We should have her on more often.
yeah.
Yes.
Let
Uh-huh.
me know.
Oh my goodness. Look, now my screen's frozen. There it is. Okay.
You're back.
My screen was frozen for a minute, you guys. All right. So thank you for everyone watching. And don't forget, you are special, you are loved, and you're stronger than you realize. Peace.